The automatic doors of the emergency room burst open so hard they nearly shattered against the walls, and for a split second, the entire hospital seemed to stop breathing. Nurses froze mid-step. A tray of surgical tools clattered to the floor. And through the entrance stepped a man so enormous, so overwhelming in presence, that even the security guards instinctively backed away. He was 7 feet tall, built like a moving wall of muscle and rage, his broad shoulders brushing the doorframe as if the hospital itself was too small to contain him. His fists were clenched, his breathing heavy, his eyes wild with something far more dangerous than anger. Fear. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of ordinary people rising in extraordinary moments, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that courage doesn't always look the way we expect. The emergency room that night had already been stretched thin. It was nearly 2 a.m., the hour when exhaustion clings to fluorescent lights and coffee loses its power. Ambulance sirens had been screaming all evening. A pileup on the highway had sent in wave after wave of injured patients. Doctors moved like ghosts between curtained bays. Monitors beeped in frantic rhythms. And in the middle of it all was Emily Carter, 23 years old, fresh out of nursing school, only 3 weeks into her first job. Emily was small. 5'2", barely 110 pounds. Her dark hair was tied into a tight bun that was already slipping loose from the chaos of the night. She had always been told she looked younger than her age, which had made her patients smile but her co-workers skeptical. She was still earning their trust. Still proving she belonged. When the giant man stormed in, shouting for help, the charge nurse instinctively stepped back. Security hesitated. No one knew whether he was there to hurt someone or beg for help. His voice boomed across the room, shaking the air itself. He demanded a doctor. He demanded immediate attention. He demanded that someone save his little brother, who lay unconscious in the back of his pickup truck outside. But it wasn't just urgency in his tone. It was panic barely held together by force. And panic, when trapped inside a body that powerful, can become explosive. 2 security guards approached him cautiously. The giant shoved one aside like he weighed nothing. The other stumbled backward, hitting a wall. Patients began to cry. A child screamed. The room tilted toward chaos. Emily felt her heart slam against her ribs. Every instinct told her to step back, to let someone else handle this. She was the rookie. The newest nurse. The smallest person in the room. But she also saw something no one else seemed to notice. The giant's hands were trembling. His massive chest rose and fell too fast. His eyes kept darting toward the entrance, toward the parking lot, toward the truck where his brother lay. This wasn't a monster. This was a terrified man running out of time. The charge nurse ordered security to restrain him. One guard reached for the giant's arm, and in a flash of movement, the man spun, his elbow flying out instinctively. The guard collapsed. A crash echoed as equipment toppled. Now it wasn't just panic. It was a full emergency inside an emergency. Emily's mind raced. During orientation, a retired military medic had come in to teach the staff a defensive stabilization technique designed not to injure, but to control someone who posed immediate danger in a medical setting. Most of the senior staff had brushed it off. They had security for that. Emily had practiced it anyway. She didn't remember deciding to move. Her body simply did. She stepped forward, cutting through the noise, calling out firmly, not loudly, but clearly enough to pierce through his spiraling fear. She told him they would help his brother. She told him they needed space to do it. She told him if he kept swinging, he would delay the only thing he wanted most. For a fraction of a second, his eyes locked onto hers. And in that fraction, she saw the breaking point. He lunged again, not at her, but in blind frustration, and that was when she acted. She pivoted to his side, using his own momentum against him, sliding her arm under his, shifting her weight low and forward exactly as she had been taught. It wasn't about overpowering him. That would have been impossible. It was about redirecting force. The technique worked because it relied on balance, not strength. His center of gravity shifted. His footing slipped. And in a controlled motion, she guided him downward, not violently, but decisively. His massive frame hit the floor with a thunderous sound that stunned the room into silence. Before he could regain leverage, she positioned herself precisely, stabilizing his arm in a way that immobilized him without causing harm. 7 feet of fury lay pinned by 5 feet of determination. The entire ER stared in disbelief. But Emily wasn't thinking about triumph. She leaned closer and spoke calmly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline roaring through her veins. She told him to breathe. She told him she understood he was scared. She told him that fighting them would only hurt his brother's chances. Something shifted in his face. The rage cracked, revealing pure anguish underneath. His body stopped resisting. His chest heaved once, twice, and then the fight drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. Security carefully took over, not roughly now, but respectfully. Within minutes, doctors were sprinting to the parking lot. The unconscious young man in the truck was rushed inside. A ruptured appendix, severe infection, borderline septic. Every second mattered. As the trauma team worked, Emily stepped aside, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. A senior nurse placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. There was no sarcasm this time. No doubt. Just quiet respect. The giant sat restrained but no longer violent. He watched through tear-blurred eyes as staff moved around his brother. And when Emily approached him later, cautiously but without fear, he did something no one expected. He whispered thank you. Over the next several hours, the hospital fought for the younger brother's life. Antibiotics. Surgery. Blood transfusions. It was a close call, but just before dawn, the surgeon emerged with exhausted relief etched into his face. The brother would live. When the news reached the giant, he broke down completely. Not the dramatic rage from earlier, but a silent collapse of relief and guilt. He admitted he had delayed bringing his brother in because they didn't have insurance. He admitted he had tried to manage the pain at home. He admitted he had been afraid of hospital bills more than the symptoms. Fear had almost cost him everything. Emily listened. She didn't judge. She arranged for the hospital's financial counselor to meet with him. She ensured he understood there were options, assistance programs, payment plans. She treated him not as a threat, but as a human being who had made a mistake under pressure. Word of the incident spread quickly through the hospital. The story of the 7-foot giant taken down by the rookie nurse became legend before the week ended. But what people talked about less was what happened afterward. The giant started visiting every day during his brother's recovery. He brought flowers for the nurses. He apologized personally to the security guard he had knocked down. He asked Emily about the technique she had used, curious rather than defensive. He had once been in the military, he revealed. Discharged years earlier. Struggled to adjust. Anger had become his armor. Size had become his shield. But underneath it all, he was just an older brother trying not to fail the only family he had left. Emily saw in him something she understood deeply. She had grown up watching her single mother work double shifts as a hospital cleaner, enduring exhaustion and quiet humiliation so her daughter could attend nursing school. Strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it endured silently. Weeks passed. The younger brother recovered fully. On the day of discharge, the giant stood awkwardly near the nurse's station holding a small wrapped box. He handed it to Emily with hands that once seemed terrifying but now trembled with gratitude. Inside was a simple bracelet made of braided paracord, the kind soldiers sometimes craft during deployment. He had made it himself. He told her she had reminded him that strength wasn't about force. It was about control. It was about protecting, not overpowering. And in that moment, Emily realized something too. She hadn't just taken down a giant. She had helped lift one back up. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe that compassion can transform even the most frightening moments into something powerful and healing, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps these stories reach people who might need hope tonight. Before we reach the end, I have one special request. Comment the word strength below if you believe real strength comes from kindness, not fear. Years later, long after Emily was no longer the rookie, long after she had trained dozens of new nurses herself, she would still remember that night. Not because she overpowered someone twice her size. Not because she became hospital folklore. She remembered it because it taught her that every outburst hides a story. Every storm carries pain at its center. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight harder, but to understand deeper. The emergency room doors would continue to burst open for years to come. There would be accidents, tragedies, chaos. But somewhere in that controlled madness stood people like Emily, ordinary, uncertain, sometimes afraid, who chose to step forward anyway. And somewhere out there walked a man who once terrified an entire hospital, now volunteering at a local veteran center, using his size not to intimidate but to protect, carrying a quiet lesson in his heart about the night a rookie nurse showed him what real power looked like. Because in the end, giants aren't measured in feet and inches. They're measured in the courage it takes to change.